And now, our next panel, Nature Restoration as a Carbon Sink, how to maximize its global role. We'll delve into the critical role of forest restoration in achieving climate goals and explore Brazil's potential to be a key player in this effort. Our panelists will talk about notable forest restoration projects being developed in Brazil and discuss some of the key challenges they are facing today. Also, they will deliberate the role of investors in financing NBS projects and assess the solutions needed to unlock the full potential of NBS in Brazil. Finally, we will examine the importance of collaboration between companies, investors, governments, and other stakeholders to meet this global agenda. And to help us with this discussion, we invite 4 experts to the stage. Ana Luísa Squadri, CFO of ReGreen. Greg Fitzgerald, Head of Capital Markets at Pachama. Pedro Faria, Partner at Patria. And Rodrigo Lauria, Director of Climate Change and Carbon at Vale. And to moderate this panel, we have Marina Cansado, founder of Converge Capital and board member at Brazil Climate Summit. Thank you.
So, hi everyone. Thank you, panelists, for being here. We have here in this session a very interesting composition. We have Rodrigo from a large corp, Pedro from one of the largest private equity firms in Latam, Greg from Pachama, a climate tech, very innovative technology and marketplace, and Ana from ReGreen, that is a project developer of reforestation projects. I would like to start with you exploring the opportunities that nature-based solutions represent to Brazil and to the world. Rodrigo, how do you see the opportunity of nature-based solutions, and what are the projects that Vale is engaged on?
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. It's almost impossible to think about NBS, mainly in Brazil, without considering the difference of biomes that we have. So we have Amazon, we have tropical forests, we have Cerrado, and for sure, each of these biomes can bring us a lot of different products, opportunities, and so on. I think the second one is try to understand that we have different initiatives taking place at the same time, and you should be able to combine all of them to bring the best result as you can. You have regenerative agriculture, we have a forest conservation, recovery, and so on. The third one is try to understand the bioeconomy. It's a powerhouse, as you mentioned a lot of during the day. And for sure, we need to understand that it's a practical action can inspire and try to put people that need this kind of initiative together. So I think these 3 are the key elements when you think about the opportunity that helps us to size the size of the opportunity. Regarding the projects, we are running a lot of them. We already delivered 15,000 hectares of recovered areas in Brazil, based on a thesis of investment that we call carbon impact. We don't want any project. We want the projects that can help us to deliver social and environmental impact to the communities. And for sure, we are trying to help and foster other initiatives such as Amazon Journey to try to enhance the ecosystem and bring startups, and try to build a more resilient ecosystem. So just to give a highlight on how we are tackling this challenge.
Great. So Ana, you are literally in the ground, starting many different projects on nature restoration, reforestation, and so on. What are the opportunities, and why start and grow a business in the sector in Brazil?
Thank you. We have a huge opportunity in Brazil. We have to right to win in terms of nature-based solutions. First, because we have all the conditions to deliver the best restorations in terms of the resources that we need. We have the best climate for it. To give you an example, in eucalyptus, when eucalyptus first came to Brazil, it took 15 years to grow a tree. After a little bit of research and development, it takes now about 7 years to grow a tree. In temperate areas, do you know how many years you need to grow a single tree? 30 years. So we have this huge opportunity with all the potential that Brazil has for growing forests. Second, we have the area. We have 90 million hectares of degraded pasture lands that we can use for restorations. We also have all the knowledge that it can draw from the forestry sector. We have already domesticated exotic species in the forestry sector, and native species, they remain exotic to us. So we can take all that knowledge into creating all this economic business and using them for the restorations. And we have already started that in Evergreen. We already have 26,000 hectares, of which 12,000 hectares are restorable hectares. We have already completed the first phase of restoration in most of it. By the end of the year, we have basically concluded the first phase of restoration in all of it. We operate in 3 clusters. The first one is in the south of Bahia, which I think is quite poetic, as when the Portuguese arrived in Brazil and they have harvested the first tree, it was in Bahia. So our first property was there. We also have in Pará and Maracasumé, which is in Maranhão, right next to Pará as well. We have already created 100 different jobs, trained 120 people in seedling collecting. We have 60 different endangered species that we have mapped in our properties that we will have to help to protect. We only have 5 farms, 4 restoration fields, but we have 446 different springs that we're going to help to protect and enhance the quality of the water that we have there. So, well, we see this as a great opportunity, and we're doing the job and they're in the field so we can seize it.
Incredible. And Pedro, from the investor perspective, we have seen Brazil in the last few years, international investors investing in carbon credit projects. We have seen family offices, and you as part of Pátria. Pátria is a very traditional and well-known institution in Brazil. When Pátria started and just yesterday launched a fund, the market was, whoa, if Pátria is going that way, it means something. So can you explore what did you see in the NBS sector?
Sure. So first of all, good afternoon. And I want to start by thanking you, Marina, Luciana. I first came to this event a couple of years back. To me, it was a huge eye-opener. I came back last year, and I guess we made some progress. And I think, more importantly, we were able to engage Pátria firm-wide into the agenda. So for me, it was personally a good sense of accomplishment. So I think we're seeing, from a pragmatic perspective, a big capital deployment opportunity here. We're trying to run some calculations. I think the question should be, how much should we be doing to actually move the needle? I spent the last few days in the Amazon, seeing what's happening there, and you see the impact. You see probably we're suffering from the worst drought after the worst drought. Nobody expected that. So I think from a fundamental perspective, I think impact is pretty important. But from a more objective standpoint, we see the opportunity to be deploying in the range of $2 to $3 billion in reforestation projects. And I'd like to think that Pátria could move the needle in that respect. We are the largest alternative asset manager in LATAM, currently managing $43 billion across many different asset classes and strategy. For us is a kind of putting the the feet in the water, but I hope the program is going to scale really, really well.
Amazing. And Greg, you are an important piece here because you materialize the signals of buyers. And we know that there are ups and downs in the carbon credit markets. So can you tell, Pachama works globally and is growing a lot in Brazil, also with this initiative with Patria. So can you bring a little bit of the buyer's perspective and why Brazil, why nature-based solutions in Brazil?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to start, first of all, just looking at the raw potential of Brazil and echoing some things that Ana Luisa mentioned. I think it's 52% of the world's tropical forests reside across Brazil, the Congo Basin, and Indonesia. And these are extremely special biomes for doing restoration work. Super high biodiversity value, that's something corporates care a lot about. Very robust growing conditions. I think Brazil is about 7% of global degraded land that could be restored. It's about 2 billion hectares. Brazil has 140 million. I know we talked about, someone mentioned Pele, I think it was Georgie earlier. That's 200 million soccer fields, just so you can grasp the sheer scale of this. It's immense, right? And that 7%, that's not the same as the other 7% that might be in the US or Canada or other places. Like this growth advantage you have, especially when companies are making 2030 goals and everybody wants credits for 2030 to prove their net zero commitment, Brazil has a very unique ability to be the leader here because it will take longer in other places. And you have, in our pipeline, you know, we've got a global footprint. We're across Latin America. We've got projects in Africa and Southeast Asia. But we have very stringent criteria for good quality partners, and easily half of our pipeline is in Brazil. Just to give testament to, there is a supply chain here. There is an ecosystem that is moving. It's a bit of a frenzy right now. There's a lot of corporate demand for carbon removals. And through all this volatility, we are not seeing that let up. Whether it's SBTi or other standards bodies like ISO, they're all asking companies to procure carbon removals as part of their strategy. So when you think about restoration in particular, that continues to go strong. I think there was 10 million tons retired between January and June this year. Some of the analyst estimates are like 200 million in 2030. So there's a big outsized demand for the supply that we have. And I think Brazil is very uniquely positioned to deliver some of the 2030 progress that corporates are looking for.
And can you explore how do you ensure that your buyers are assessing high integrity carbon credits? Can you explore more about the technology of
You can
Pachama?
introduce them to green.
Yeah, introduce them all to green. I think this is one of the biggest confusion factors right now is everybody wants quality and everybody wants integrity, and nobody really has a strong grasp on what that means. And so we spend a lot of time on customer education, introducing frameworks for what do you care about? Like, does quality to you mean permanence? Okay, what kind of legal protection is on the land? Does quality mean durability? Do you have native species planted? A shared goal that Regreen shares, like that will enable a more robust ecosystem. And you can look across many factors of risk and integrity, but the fundamentals are make claims that you can stand behind that are data-driven. We use technology to look at the areas and make sure the lands are eligible, to make sure the carbon projections are conservative so people aren't disappointed in 5 years. And at the end of the day, try to get people to have a more rich understanding than just saying, is it $30 a ton or is it 75? Because the reality is those are very different. Like if you want a high-quality project that you can really believe you will be able to stand behind for decades to come, that will cost a different amount than a project that purely represents some carbon stored in a tree that might not be there in a decade. So I think that language around risk and price and quality is a big effort of the market right now. And I'd say across competitors even, people are aligning to try to fight this common cause so that everyone can have that shared language to align around.
Rodrigo, Vale is a big buyer. How do you do to guarantee that you are engaging with projects of high quality and integrity?
Yeah, good question. I think the first one is to try to figure out how, as Greg mentioned, what is the quality? So we invested a lot of time to establish a guideline. What are the principles that, which credit we can buy, or which project that we are investing or would invest in the future that can comply or should comply with this and that rule. So we have a very simple approach the quality of the credits, so the technical reference of the credits. The second one, how the MRV will take in place, so if it's possible to monitor and how to do that. And then lastly, where's the benefits that this project or credit can generate, social and impact, environmental impacts as an outcome.
Ana, again, in the ground, can you share your main challenges on implementing a reforestation project and how to deal with these market and media doubts? And
that's one challenge, definitely. Well, the challenge tends to change as we evolve because, well, we're creating a sector, so it shifts as we tackle a problem and we solve a problem, it tends to change and become something else becomes a bottleneck. When we first started, the main bottleneck was sourcing areas, and we created this proprietary software in which we can very, very quickly assess the area and check the potential for restoration and the potential for return that we have when we tackle that problem. So land sourcing is not a problem as for now. And the main challenge became capital sourcing, so assessing capital. First, because, well, there is a asymmetry, there is this difference between the time it takes first to heal nature and the returns to come and the funds that we have now and the financial instruments that we have now. Funds, they usually take 5 years. And I have my first issuance of carbon credit on the 3rd year. So it's hard for me to have all the returns in 5 years. So that's the first challenge. The second one is no, everyone's avoiding taking the risk. So the off-takers, they do not want to take the risk because, well, it's an innovation, something new. The commercial banks and even the DFIs, they're not willing to take the risk for the restorations that we have. And blended finance is a great word, but it's very hard to actually do something in blended finance. Let's be honest. So with track record, we will solve that. I'm 100% sure, but it took us 25 years to make the renewable energy sector mainstream. As my friend Tony from Capital for Climate, I don't know if he's here, likes to say, so we cannot afford that time. So we need capital, and all clients, they want their credits delivered, especially by 2030, 2035, because that's when they have to meet their commitments. So if I need those carbon credits by 2030, 2035, I need to plant those restorations now. I need the cash now. So we do not have time. So that's the challenge, the second challenge that I'm trying to solve, especially as the CFO. So that's, I wake up and I go to sleep thinking about that. But once we tackle that, then we have the next one and the next one. And one of them is definitely clients, because I get a feeling that many of the clients that we discuss, they are also in the discovery journey. So a lot of them, they don't know what they want. They don't know their objective. And when we discuss and when we talk projects with them, they also want to understand the project so they can see what is quality for them. So, and that's a strenuous and long process. It takes a very long lead time for us to sell for each client, and we have to answer Q&As, we have to go through a long due diligence, and for each client, the due diligence different. So that's a challenge as well, because we have to shorten that lead time so we can have more projects and have more areas so we can have that impact. And finally, well, playing Mother Nature is not easy. We are trying to recreate a forest that is full of life and very complex. And scaling anything comes from simplifying things. So we need to understand every activity so we know how to simplify them and how we can scale so it can be cost efficient in terms of the VCUs. Because the lower cost that we have, then we have a greater market and we can have more carbon credits.
Greg, Pachama is involved in a coalition that is very important because it's gathering companies to make commitments and to signalize to the market that, or to developers that they can keep going. Can you share more about this coalition?
Sure. We hope to catalyze the coalition, and to be impartial, we sort of stepped back and let it be self-organizing at a point, but really was inspired by the Frontier Coalition with Stripe and how that's created a very clear market signal for engineered removals. And we've looked at other coalitions around REDD+ credits like LEAF, and there wasn't really anything existing that sought to show a very consistent demand signal that would give investors confidence, that would give project developers confidence. So we assembled a group that include Microsoft and Google and forgive me for not mentioning all the members right now, but the point is, let's align a quality standard and let's put out an actual, pricing signals. I don't think we have firm dollar pricing yet, but at least there is a willingness to pay for high quality credits. Expect to run RFPs through this kind of unified body so that you can aggregate the demand and get those efficiencies and volumes that are much needed.
Amazing. And Pedro, can you tell us more about the partnership with Pachama and the fund that you are launching that is very interesting because it's not investing just one developer. It's a fund that aims to foster and leverage the whole ecosystem. So it's very interesting. It would be great to learn more.
So just a step back, my main role is growth equity investor. So we started this journey a couple of years back, precisely searching for companies that had reached some kind of a scale that we could eventually help them grow sustainably. And to our disappointment, we couldn't find many. And I still remember being in one of the committee presentations and say, yeah, we need to invest in a company like Pachama. Then I said, great, but we don't have a mandate to invest outside LATAM. So we decided then that we should probably reach out to them, and we started a conversation that led us to actually partnering in this fund that we just launched yesterday. For us, Pachama means a lot because they're taking probably one of the biggest constraints or risks that we're facing. They're showing us that there is demand. They're helping us in the MRV part of the equation. We've seen the technology. We think it's an advantage, and this is really coming from our playbook of being very associative. So we felt that this partnership would make a lot of sense. So it's been a learning journey. I'm learning a lot from Greg, from Diego, and I think we're able just to put a better value proposition to investors. And speaking of which, I completely agree with Ana. We need those kinds of strong credibility signals to start acting as a conduit of long-term capital into the vertical. So each one of us is kind of bringing a piece of the puzzle together, and I like to think that all of us are going to be working together on many interesting projects.
Yes, collaboration is key, and Vale, Fundo Vale, since the beginning in Brazil, are also very engaged and fostering a lot of the ecosystem. Can you share, Rodrigo, more of the initiatives that Vale is supporting in order to advance the NBS sector?
Yeah, we started this a couple of years back, and when we decided, based on our voluntary commitment to recover and protect 500,000 hectares, the reality was there's no feasible way to move forward. So we started trying to enhance and understand how to build a more resilient ecosystem. At the time, we started using grants to foster and to implement and to help. And then now we have Belterra, Inoca, Escaporã, some of the startups, if you can call them as startups, and we see how important it was to take this position. Now we understood that we should be more focused on a catalytic capital. So we're moving from grants to a more integrated approach, bringing new partners. We're talking about some opportunities here, and I think this is should be the mainstream for what we're discussing here. let's take a break and sum all of our commitments. Probably we reach out, 2, 3, 4 million tons of hectares easily. How many hectares are in place now? So I think we should think with this idea. We need to, as Anna mentioned, we should think in practical actions now, because we need to deliver it now. It's easier to think about 2050, 2060, but the clock's ticking, so we need to practical actions right now.
And to deliver now, I want to hear from each of you, what are the main things that we have to unlock? What are the bottlenecks that we should be focusing? Especially we have COP next year in Brazil, that will be a COP in the Amazon. So the world is also expecting from Brazil to have addressed a lot of the challenges that we have. So what are the main things that we need to
I can
unlock?
go first, and if you let me, I can speak throughout the afternoon. So I'd like to emphasize one. We need to use the right lens to combine risk and opportunity. We are still trying to reach out and analyze the projects using the traditional lens. Infrastructure, not wrong, I'm not asking to make wrong decisions, but we need to customize the model to really understand what the projects are and how to tackle and moving forward with investments. Again, we are discussing a lot about investments, the potential and so on, but bring this, as I mentioned, the PowerPoint to the reality is quite complicated, and we need a practical and feasible risk assessment to put these projects ongoing.
Do you want to complement?
Sure, sorry. Well, first, we have to tackle the financing problem, be it creating a form of guarantee that we can take that risk out of the equation and use it so we can get funding. And that is key so we can restore more areas and have more. I want, of course, we're going to succeed, but I want the whole sector to succeed. And second, now, every time we go to a land and we secure land, we are we have comparative disadvantage when I'm compared to other uses of the land, such as in agriculture or even cattle farming. You have a lot of incentives, subsidies, and everything, so you can actually have returns on those areas. We need to be at least equally when you should have equal opportunities for the same areas as you already have in agriculture or in cattle farming, especially because I see restoration as a de-risking for those activities. We need restoration. What is the main risk that we currently have for agriculture and for cattle farming? Climate change. We need to protect the arc of restoration. So for me, in order to assess land, I have to have equal opportunities to the other activities that a land can offer. So that's second. Also, we're working on creating new technologies for our restorations so we can have a cheaper cost per VCU. One of them is drones. We have a terrific result of drones. Now we use drones in each activity and each restoring method that we have. So it's amazing how we can develop technology. For instance, in the forestry sector, after 50 years, now we're 5 times more productive for the forestry than when we started. So my idea is to apply that on native species. So that's key also. So it can restore, and we're really willing to invest in that. And well, as you're saying, and we've had some very, very bad press on Red Plus and even other projects. And that's terrible for the market because as clients, they're concerned about bad press that leads to inactivity. And the price of inactivity, it's huge. But you're not pricing that because you cannot see the price of the inactivity. You will see that a few years later. But the price of the bad press that you get from investing in a project or even getting an offtake from a project that has a fraud, that's very short term. So that's a problem that we have. So of course, we have to aim for high quality, and I'm the first to raise my hand and say that high quality is key for the project, but that will backlash us because we definitely need to have as much projects as we need, and protection is key as well. Of course, restoration is key, but we need also to protect the land that we already have. So we also have to fight all that bad press about the projects that we have. Brazil is amazing. We have so many different amazing projects in Brazil, and we have to advocacy for that.
And Greg, yes, of course. And Greg, what are the lessons that Brazil could learn from other countries that Pachama work? What are the main concerns that we should address as Brazilians with the international buyers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was pondering this before the panel, and we work in particular across the US, Mexico, and Brazil very heavily on the restoration side. We have projects all over the world of different types, whether removal or Red Plus. Mexico is very interesting in the legal framework they have for land that's been born out of the agricultural governance. And I think what strikes me as very interesting in Brazil is that there's still a lot of very different land engagement models. We're very focused on the Atlantic forest, for example, where there's a little bit more clear title. But in general, in Mexico, there's a lot of alignment that doing a restoration project is a community decision. That creates a lot more cohesive alignment around what does fair incentive look like to use your land for this kind of a project. I think I haven't seen that level of standardization of approach across Brazil, and it's interesting to think about a future where norms get established, and I think that will happen, and it will start to make the pricing less volatile across this project versus that project. Landowners talk to each other, project developers talk to each other, people start to understand quality implications of how you engage with land. So that's one interesting area to think about. I think the other is in the US, there's been very robust, in Canada too, where I live, very robust supply chains if you think about nurseries and seedling production, but also just a lot of data and expertise. And we have the benefit of that being conducted over the decades, that you know exactly how fast certain trees grow. There are a lot of species in Brazil to be identified and understood. And so the more you can be leveraging data and technology, building expertise, that allows you to build more bespoke projects that perform well for the specific biome they're in. And coming back to Pachama, like this is where we use a lot of very interesting analytical methods with different layers of mapping and remote sensing to say, hey, where is the best place to build a project? It shouldn't just be the first place you can find land. It's like you can actually prospect for the land where the restoration will be most effective. So I think there is something about research and data that could be more open sourced and made public for these efforts in Brazil from what we've seen in other countries.
And Pedro, as someone that is now fundraising to invest in different projects, what are the questions that your potential investors are making? What are your main concerns on also deploying these investments?
I also attended a pitch session here, and I was listening to Bia, my partner, speaking about it. I think questions revolve around a lot about uncertainties and the risk profile overall. I think land, tenure, and permanence, I think they come first and foremost. So how these are extremely long duration projects, so you get to a point you're saying what's going to happen in 2040, 2045. in terms of regulatory, in terms of how do you protect the land, etc. So I think that's first and foremost in the agenda of investors. And I think our job here is to look for specific pockets of institutional capital demand that can meet that kind of duration and risk profile. So it's a bit of a matching exercise. We're talking to families. Are families the right people to go to? You may say yes, if it's a new generation, if it's a family that is somewhat involved in the agenda as a purpose. But I like to see more of a demand from permanent capital, institutional capital, corporates who want the offtake. Those are kinds of solutions that we want to bring aboard into the fund that we launched.
Great. So we are doing a last round, and I would like each of you to finalize with a message for the international audience about how Brazil will play its role on scaling nature restoration, reforestation.
Okay. In a few words, we are ready to receive the money. We have, so please do it. But we have the right instruments to do so, and we are keen to integrate this knowledge that already developed with the real opportunities to scale up this market. So it's an invitation. We are ready. We are keen to invest. So please do it, and let's coordinate our efforts to achieve the goals that we need to achieve.
Well, the best technology that we have to remove carbon from the atmosphere are trees. And we deliver way more than just capturing carbon from the atmosphere. We have the world as we know it. We don't need only less carbon in the atmosphere. We need biodiversity. We need water. And we deliver way more than that when we restore an area. So we not only have the cheapest carbon credit for removals, but we also have the best technology because we're delivering way more with that price. So we have the best product, we have the best environment, so we can deliver that to you because we have the best resources. We have great companies. Regreen is just one of them. We are going to create a great sector, and we are going to lead. In Brazil, we're going to be a powerhouse in terms of the new economy. So be prepared. Come to us, invest in Brazil, get offtakes. We aim to be the best, and you're going to be the best, and it's going to be great to count you in.
For the global audience, I think my message would be look to Brazil because this is sector leadership in the making. And if you're a corporate buyer and you need credits, you can have a lot of confidence that you're getting best in class. And you still have the ability to influence, but this is where you can see a lot of the great projects in the making. But as we look globally, I mentioned Brazil's like 7%, right? And there's a lot of restoration work to be done. I would hope that folks that are pursuing restoration in different parts of Africa, in Asia, can look at the way the ecosystem is coming together here and speed up that process. Like maybe it could be 5 years behind. That would be a great outcome. But really, like, this ecosystem should be studied as it evolves, and it should be looked to provide that voice in the global, especially for tropical forest restoration, to see how it works in Brazil and can work elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the message I'd like to leave you with is has a lot to do with this event, seeing how the audience is changing, and I'm just meeting a lot of people who I know from previous lives and doing very interesting stuff and very well accomplished. You see the talent density, you see the right people kind of coming together. So to me, that's probably the most credible sign that I got here, and I think I agree with Greg. This is segment leadership in the making.
Amazing, and I think that for the ones, the people planning to go to COP next year, I think is a great opportunity to visit projects. This year, I co-organized with Capital for Climate the first Brazil Climate Investment Week, and Capital for Climate organized some field trips, and it was very eye-opening to investors to go to Regreen and see a forest that was restored, to go to the Amazon and to understand the complexity of implementation of projects. So I think they invite us to come and learn from the ground. Thank you.
Thank you.